On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, Jesus' disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" So Jesus sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is my guest room where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there." So the disciples set out and went to the city and found everything as Jesus had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. Good afternoon, friends, or good evening. It depends on when you are joining us for this Maundy, Thursday worship service. If you are part of our Silver Lake United Methodist Church friends, I'm going to ask you now to pause this video and go and grab the items that were in your Holy Week care package for this service. Remember, each service that we're doing has an experiential element as part of it. And tonight or this afternoon, you're going to grab the bag that had the pita bread in, as well as the bag that had the communion juice in it as well. And you're going to bring those and set those in front of you. You're welcome to put them on a decorative plate or maybe an earthenware plate. However your spirit is feeling drawn to present the elements for this evening's storytelling as well as communion, go for it. But do take that moment, go grab these items. They are critical for us to tell the story. But I'm glad you're back now, and I'm glad that you see that we have a feast here in the upper room, and the upper room has come to you on this day as a way to help tell the story even more. We're going to begin this worship service with a litany. And again, you don't have this particular litany as part of your materials that were in your Holy Week care package, but it's an easy litany, just like the one from Palm Sunday, where it repeats itself, and it's just one or two words. So tonight's worship litany is going to be, "We remember and are connected." So, we remember and are connected. Do that one more time. We remember and are connected. All right, perfect. So, when I begin, I will gesture to you when it's your turn to offer up your voice as being a part of this litany. Because the good news is, yes, we are worshiping in our homes, we are worshiping on our computers and our smartphones, but that doesn't mean we're not connected, right? So we get to be connected by sharing our voice and sharing the things that we have brought with us to this table tonight. So let us begin. Jesus, teacher, healer, leader, storyteller, and friend, we meet together to remember you. And your response? We remember and are connected. Your life and example, your words of guidance, your sacrifice as a gift of love, we remember with bread. We remember and are connected. Jesus' wedding guest, table sharer, foot washer, and affirmer. We drink wine together to remember you. We remember and are connected. Your actions and relationships, your wisdom and compassion, your death and resurrection, we remember with wine. We remember and are connected. Thanks be to God for that, right? All right, so our first hymn that we're going to be singing, and actually our only hymn that we will have tonight, will be You Are Mine, and that was included in your worship care package. So go ahead and grab that from your Maundy, Thursday items. And if you do not have that available to you, just know that you can also go on Google right now. So pause us, go on Google, and type in You Are Mine hymn. And then the lyrics should pop up for you. And if you want to have that on another screen and use that screen to sing along with us, that would be wonderful. Just know there are multiple ways that you can access this, even if you weren't able to get the Holy Week care package that we sent to our Silver Lake folks. So we're going to sing the first 2 verses to lift up this worship service tonight. I also invite you, if you are interested in joining us, as you see, we've got Wendy and Tom here and Emily in the background too. She has her plate of goods, and Wendy and Tom have their plate, and as you can see, I have mine. We're going to be eating intermittently as we continue to tell the story, because after all, we did come to the upper room tonight to encounter Jesus. And so what better way to encounter Jesus than to eat with him? So grab some food. In addition to your bread and your grape juice, whatever it is. If you have goldfish, grab goldfish. If you've got potato chips, grab that. Whatever you're feeling in the mood for, to be in the upper room with Christ with, just grab that, because when it comes to Jesus, he really doesn't discriminate against food. We learned through his life and his ministry. He made it wide open. The table was very wide open. So grab something to eat. Join us. When the disciples had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." And they began to distress and to say to him one after another, "Well, surely not I, not me." And he said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who is dipping bread into the bowl with me. For the Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that one to whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that one not to have been born." So Jesus took a loaf of bread, and he blessed the bread, and he broke the bread and gave it to his disciples and said, "Take, this is my body." And then he took the cup, and after giving thanks to God, he gave it to them, and he said to them, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many. Truly I tell you, I will never again drink of the fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new in the kingdom of God." And here ends the reading from the Gospel of Mark. A couple of days ago, we got to celebrate and remember the part of the story of Jesus' last week when he entered into Jerusalem on a donkey, and there were people waving branches and laying down their cloaks on the road, and this huge parade had started through the city, but it wasn't like the opulence of Caesar or somebody in the Roman Empire, like a general, a war general, but there was still a crowd nonetheless. And of course that caused a huge stir in Jerusalem because thousands of pilgrims, Jewish pilgrims, had descended upon the city for the Passover. And the city was full, and it was probably bursting at the seams. There was not a lot of places to go, not a lot of places to sleep. But as a result, this murmur had developed into a huge roar about this Jesus of Nazareth, right? If the Roman guards had not heard about this man yet, they surely knew about him because they were keeping a close eye on the city, making sure that no mayhem broke out. So Jesus, in I think some of his own wisdom, understood that the ripple effect, like the rock in the pond, had been dropped. And now it was time to lay low. Now it was time to celebrate the story of Passover, of his people, with his disciples, somewhere quiet, to relax and to lounge. And so he asked his disciples to go find a place, find a man carrying a water jar, which, by the way, in the ancient world would have been really weird. It was usually women who carried water jars. But he told his disciples, find the man carrying the water jar and follow him because that's where you're going to need to go. And that's exactly what they did. And they found this beautiful, what I'm imagining, quiet, sequestered place where they could sit down and have a meal together and tell the story, their story as a Jewish people. But then Jesus started doing something really strange. As they were eating, as we are here tonight, right? I hope you're eating with us too. I know my mom said don't chew with your mouth full and talk at the same time, Amanda, but you know what? Monday, Thursday, all rules get thrown out of the water because Jesus lets me. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But yeah, so Jesus and his disciples were lounging, and Jesus was telling the story of their relationship to the God of Israel, right? Jesus as a good Jew, as a faithful Jew. And as he was eating, though, he took these common elements that were probably part of that Passover meal. I mean, even scholars don't fully understand what that would have looked like in the first century, right? There's very little writing about how a Passover meal would have happened. But we know that some basic elements were there, right? Basic elements. And by basic, I mean literally basic, bread. Unleavened bread, right? It was the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Passover, where they were telling the story of the Exodus, where they could not take anything that could help the bread rise. They had to just bake bread so it was flat. So it was unleavened. There was no yeast in it. So we know that Jesus was eating bread with his friends. And we know in the ancient world that part of a meal, a common meal, would have been wine. Now, mind you, in the United Methodist tradition, of course, we have grape juice. But our brothers and sisters around the world, Christian brothers and sisters around the world who are celebrating this meal with us tonight, are consuming wine. And in the ancient world, it would have been wine, right? Because there's no way to store grape juice, right? It would have gone bad, it would have molded, but when you ferment things, it keeps. And what is fermented grape juice? It's wine. So we know Jesus had bread and he had wine. And he was telling the story of the God of Israel and how the God of Israel made a covenant with God's people. And how that same God faithfully led those people out of slavery and into freedom. And how that God continues to love the people of Israel. let us not forget. As Christians, we have to be very mindful about tonight and how we have our storytelling in relationship to our Jewish brothers and sisters who are celebrating the Passover with us in their tradition. But what Jesus did is he then reimagined the story. He literally turned it upside down, just like he did when he came on that donkey into the city, right? He took a cup and a cup of wine and said, okay, this wine that you drink with every meal, every time you sit down and you drink this wine together and you remember me. Remember that this is the new covenant I am making with you tonight. A new covenant that translates love so much broader than you could ever imagine. A love that claims you as God's own. You are mine, right? We sang that, by the way, as our opening hymn, where it talks about, don't be afraid, I'm with you. I've called you each by name, come and follow me. I will bring you home. I love you. I love you. And you are mine. I think that's exactly what Jesus did that night. He looked at his disciples and retranslated a simple drink of wine to be something much more extraordinary. That every time we drink it, and we do so intentionally, with the story of God in our hearts, we are reminded of that love. And that love changes us. And he was trying to tell his disciples that night. Although I can only imagine them as, again, faithful Jews, right? We're telling the story of the Passover. Jesus, what are you talking about? This is your blood? Whoa, time out. We're not gonna go there. First of all, you're the Messiah, right? You're gonna stick around. You're gonna be with us forever. You're gonna bring down the empire that is Rome, that has been nothing but a pain in our side for generations. You're going to bring that empire down, and the kingdom of Israel will rise up, and the kingdom of God will come again, and right, like, because you're going to be with us this whole time. And Jesus could only smile and say, every time you drink of this cup, remember me. And they're so confused. I could only imagine. And then, of course, to take bread, and then, to take bread and break it as though he was going to share it with them. But instead of sharing, he said, wait a second, before you share this bread that I'm giving you, I want you to remember every time you tear and rip this with your body, you are remembering my body, which is to be broken apart for you and for the world. And he just retranslated an entire story system that the Jewish people would have known and understood, and not just retranslated, he built upon it. The love of God that was there for the Israelites and into the Jewish people in the first century in Jerusalem and in the Roman Empire also became extended to the Gentiles, to the people who weren't necessarily part of the Jewish history line or the bloodline. God's love continued to expand, to be known, and to be given. But he said it's going to have to come at a cost, right? Things are going to break down. I'm going to be broken. I'm going to be spilled out. And you will grieve. And not just grieve, but by the way, one of you, you're going to betray me. Darn it. You're going to be part of helping that happen. And that's going to be a huge burden. And it's going to remind the rest of the disciples that we humans are fragile. So I imagine Jesus just popping a piece of bread in his mouth after that, right? This profound moment. And the disciples wondering, who is this guy? who is this? And he goes on to have a meal with his friends. Because I don't know if you've noticed this, but whenever deep grief happens and maybe when confusion happens, what is our natural inclination, by the way? I'm going to give you one hint. You can say it out loud. It's to eat. It's to eat. And you know me, I love to eat. And I've said in my sermons before, Jesus was one of the first foodies, right? I still stand behind that statement. One of the great foodies, I guess. Maybe not the first, but he was definitely a great foodie. He understood that, right? When deep grief settles in on us, and folks, deep grief has settled in on us. We cannot be in worship together tonight to tell this story together, but we can be in our homes and we can eat together and we can break bread together and we can lift a cup together, right? And every time we do that and we invoke the name of love to be at our table with us, we are connected. We remember and we are connected. That is the power. That is the power of Thursday in this Holy Week. It grounds us in the promise that when we remember to sit down and eat at the table with one another and with God in our hearts, we are connected. Even betrayal, even death, because it's coming. Tomorrow, it's coming, folks. Death is coming. Deep grief is coming. A world turned upside down, literally, for the people who love Jesus the most. It's coming. But it doesn't end there. We get to feast and celebrate on Easter morning because death and empires and betrayals, they're part of the human condition. Diseases that flow through an entire globe, right? Killing thousands and hundreds and thousands of people. It's part of the human condition that we are fragile, we are susceptible to diseases that are so far beyond our control. All of that cannot separate us from the love of Christ, who sat down at a table with his friends, with his disciples, and said, remember, and you're connected. One day Easter will make sense. Will make sense in a way that is so far beyond our intellect, but has everything to do with our bodily being, right? Because Jesus grounded death and resurrection and love and hope and promise in bread and in cup. And that's the good news. So, we continue to be quarantined. We continue to have the stay-at-home mandate. You know what? That's hard. Oh, gosh, I just wish I could be with you all to eat and feast and praise and jump for joy in person, but I can't. But I can break bread, and I can know that you're breaking bread, and I know that you're taking a drink of your wine or your juice or whatever it is, your tea, your milk, it doesn't matter. But we're raising our glass, and we are remembering, and we are connected because God is at the table with us. Instead of going into singing a praise, a psalm of praise or a hymn of praise to that, we're actually going to let our bodies absorb what it means to sit in love and eat. And so the centering prayer time is actually, I'm going to ask you to grab whatever it is that you have, whether it's a potato chip, goldfish, pasta, I don't care what it is. But during the centering prayer time, we're going to eat mindfully, whatever it is. And just reflect on the idea that love comes to us in the most basic form. And in coming to us in the most basic form, it connects us all in the most basic ways. And then I'll ring the bell, and we will come out of that mindful eating or that intentional eating. And then we get to offer another prayer, and then we get to celebrate the communion with one another and with Christ. So grab something to eat. Let's be mindful in the common ways that God meets us at the table. Thanks be to God. Amen. I'm wondering if for some of you that felt really strange and really awkward to eat so quietly and with such intention. I just want to let you know that I did a silent retreat where for 4 days, I know that's hard for some of you to believe, I was silent for 4 days, right? I know, hard to believe. But in that time, we were asked to eat in community with one another, just like this, as we're sitting at a table, but doing exactly what just happened. And I remember the first day thinking, oh my gosh, this is so bizarre. This feels unnatural. But then after each meal that I ate, it became more and more natural. And I noticed that there was something very powerful about sitting next to another person. And we didn't need to talk to connect. There was a deep connection that was built by the fact that we both were coming to that table to eat that beautiful food with gratitude and a thanksgiving, right? And it was very intentional. You know, the Buddhists would call it mindfulness eating. But we did it as a mindfulness practice in the Christian contemplative tradition. And I had never felt more connected with another stranger, brother or sister, or a person who was a stranger to me in some ways. I didn't really know them, but we felt deeply connected by this act of eating quietly. And silently together. So I hope that for some of you, you found that restorative, and for others who found that strange, give it another try. And eventually, as you keep trying that practice, it becomes really powerful if you give it some space to breathe. So thank you for engaging in that with me. So we come to this time of offering up this pastoral prayer for our worship. And instead of a litany, I'm just going to ask that we sing again. We sing this invocation of God filling our hearts with peace. Peace in a time where there is deep unrest within us and within our world. And sometimes singing a song like that says it all. We don't need to say much more. I will offer a brief prayer, and then we will sing that song again. So Wendy, Tom, and I will sing through it twice just to get you familiarized with it again, and then you'll sing through it once with us. And then at the end of the short prayer, then we will sing through it one more time. Come and fill our hearts with our peace. So, all right. Join us, will you? Come and fill our hearts with your peace. You alone are holy. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. Hallelujah. Sacred and holy God, God of the covenant, God of all faithfulness, we have gathered this evening hour as friends gathered with Jesus in an upper room long ago. We come bearing the marks of a bitter and broken world, a fearful world, a lost world. We come from anonymous places with dry and thirsty spirits. Remind us in the breaking of the bread of our need and of your sufficiency. Refresh us and make us whole with the cup of your forgiveness, the cup of your new life. Draw us nearer to each other in mutual service and closer to you in the covenant of faithfulness and thanksgiving. As the night advances, deepen in us a sense of your steadfast love for us in Jesus Christ, our friend and our Redeemer. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. You alone, O Lord, are holy. Come and fill our hearts with your peace. Hallelujah. Amen. So we finally, not only get to feast together digitally, but we also get to partake in communion together digitally. So you have your half pita bread and you have your grape juice. Now is that time to get it fully ready because we are going to remember and be connected and eat of God's brokenness, God's beauty, God's simplicity, God's complexity, and then God's love, most of all. Love poured out for us. So we will begin the communion liturgy. We did not intentionally include any kind of communion liturgy because we wanted this again to be something that you can sing with your body, experience with your voice, and of course open with your heart. So we will together sing "Let Us Be Bread," and that is also on your handout that was given to you in your care packages. So we're going to sing this through twice at the very top of the communion liturgy. And instead of doing the singing that some of you are very used to doing, like with the Sanctus and the Holy Mystery, we're going to continue to sing this "Let Us Be Bread." Because the wonderful thing about being connected in Christ and connected in God is that we are connected to each other, and therefore we are called to be the bread for the world. The bread of love, the bread of compassion, the bread of selflessness, right? All of that good stuff of gratitude. We're called to be that bread, especially in a world right now where so many people are panicking and are feeling confused and lost. We're called to be bread. Basic, powerful, essential. So, Emily. Join in. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Lift up your hearts. We lift them up to the Lord. It is right to give our thanks to the Lord our God. It is right to give our thanks and praise. So when the hour had come, O Creator of the universe, you lifted up the cup of creation, and you poured it into the emptiness of chaos. You gave a fountain flowing with living water, but we drank from betrayal's bitter cup. You asked the prophets to remind us of our promises made, but we continued to embrace pains of hopelessness. But because you called us your own, you called us beloved. You sent Jesus to show us the way back home, and that is why we sing again. Let us be bread blessed by the Lord, broken and shared, life for the world. Let us be wine, love freely poured. Let us be one in the Lord. So when the hour had come, your Son tied humanity around his heart. And in the midst of his friends and in the presence of his enemies, he kept promises that were made to you to love us to the very end. And that is why he took these basic elements, a basic element of bread, and he gave thanks to it, and he broke it. He blessed it and broke it and gave it to his friends and said, "Eat from this, all of you. Every time you do so in remembrance of me. This is my body, broken for you." And then when the supper was almost over, he just took a common cup of wine. And he gave thanks for the wine. He blessed it, and he gave it to his disciples, and he said to his friends and his followers, "Drink from this, all of you. This is the new covenant, a covenant of love expanded across the universe for you and for all. Every time you drink of it, do so in remembrance of me." And so, that is why when we come to this table and we remember, and we are therefore connected in remembering, We do remember this mystery of faith that just reminds us that Christ has died, Christ is risen, and Christ will come again. There is an eternal nature to you, O God. And now that the hour is come, I ask that you send your Holy Spirit upon the gifts of this bread and cup that is before us in our homes and here at this church sanctuary. Feed us with your compassion that we might be made whole, and in our healing we may become servants to a shattered and broken world. And when there is no more hours to come, and there is only peace and life with you, may we gather in the upper room of your heart to serve our loved ones with grace, receive forgiveness from our enemies, and sing your joy for all eternity. And that is why we now pray this prayer that unites us with Christians throughout time and history, as we say now, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So I invite you now to grab your piece of bread and tear it and share it to any and all who are in your home with you right now, as we take this communion together. And then, of course, grab your cup of juice. And so we eat together. This is the body broken for us all. And this is the cup of new life poured out for all. Let us sing this prayer. Let us be one in the Lord. Let us continue to remember that we are deemed by God, God's beloved. We are love because we have been loved. And that's why God says, you are mine. So let us sing these last two verses. So verse 3 and 4 of You Are Mine.
You
I bless you now, friends, with this poem by Rainer Maria Rilke. But first, I want to say thank you for joining me and Wendy and Tom and Emily in the upper room tonight. I hope this upper room on the screen has carved a place for an upper room to exist in your heart for the night. And we also know that the story will continue, right, to go in the path of death and grief. And that is tomorrow. So I invite you to please make sure you leave space for that grief. That grief needs some space to be felt. And knowing that as disciples, sometimes we just want to run away. But this poem here reminds us what happens even in the upper room if we try to scatter. They are assembled, astonished and disturbed around him, who like a sage resolved his fate and now leaves those to whom he most belonged, leaving and passing by them like a stranger. The loneliness of old comes over him, which helped mature him for his deepest acts. Now will he once again walk through the olive grove, and those who love him still will flee before his sight. To this last supper he has summoned them, and, like a shot that scatters birds from trees, their hands drew back from reaching for the loaves upon his word. They fly across to him, they flutter frightened round the supper table, searching for an escape. But he is present everywhere, like an all-pervading twilight hour. Amen.